It began with a question so simple that the entire crew of the Interstellar Research Vessel Aethon fell silent when they heard it. The child, if you could call it that, had no name that human vocal cords could properly pronounce. It was small, translucent, with wide violet eyes that seemed to contain entire star systems within their depths. The Luminae, as its species was known, were considered among the most intellectually advanced beings in the Seventh Galactic Accord. They had mastered faster-than-light travel before humans had discovered fire. They had solved the mathematical foundations of consciousness before Earth/S first civilization carved its first hieroglyph. They had watched 1,000 species rise, flourish, and fade across the long arc of cosmic time. And yet, on a gray Tuesday morning aboard the Aethon, in the sterile white corridor between the medical bay and the observation deck, this small, ancient, impossibly wise being looked up at Dr. Mara Osei with its galaxy-filled eyes and asked the most innocent question she had ever heard. Why do humans put their dead into the ground? Dr. Osei, xenobiologist, grief counselor, and the only person aboard the Aethon who had lost her mother 3 months ago, stopped walking. She turned to face the child, and for the first time in what felt like years, she did not know what to say. What followed over the next 72 hours would not only answer that question, it would unravel centuries of galactic misunderstanding about what love truly means, not just for humans, but for every sentient species in the known universe. The Aethon had been on its cultural exchange mission for 14 months when the Luminae delegation joined the crew at the Outer Rim Station Korath 9. The exchange program was the brainchild of Ambassador Dayara Chen, a tiny woman with sharp eyes and a doctorate in interspecies communication who had spent 30 years building bridges between humanity and its galactic neighbors. The program was simple in theory. Take a group of young Luminae, their equivalent of children, though the youngest among them was technically 847 years old, and expose them to human culture, human science, human art, and human life. In return, the human crew would travel to the Luminae home system and experience the same. The Luminae delegation consisted of 3 young ones. The smallest, the one with violet eyes, the crew had taken to calling Zevi, a name that sounded vaguely similar to the clicking, harmonic sound it produced when addressing itself. The others were called Sola and Tharun by the crew, though they were good-natured about the approximations. In 14 months, the Luminae children had absorbed an extraordinary amount of human knowledge. They had learned to read in 17 languages. They had studied human history from the Stone Age through the Great Migration into space. They had sat in on physics lectures, medical procedures, art classes, and diplomatic briefings. They had watched human films, listened to human music, and tasted human food, a process that required the use of a special molecular translator, as Luminae did not technically eat in any way humans would recognize. But despite all of this immersion, there were certain aspects of human existence that the Luminae found deeply puzzling. Death was the most puzzling of all. The Luminae did not die in the way humans understood the word. They transitioned, a process that was gradual, peaceful, and completely communal. When a Luminae/S energy signature began to fade, its entire community gathered to receive what it left behind. Memories, knowledge, emotional imprints, all absorbed back into the collective consciousness of the species. Nothing was lost. Everything was transformed. The individual dissolved into the whole, and the whole was enriched by the dissolution. To the Luminae, human death looked catastrophic, violent, final. They had studied the biology of it and understood the mechanics. But the human response to death, the rituals, the ceremonies, the burial, the grief, made no logical sense to them whatsoever. Zevi had been thinking about this for months. It had reviewed every piece of information available in the ship/S database about human funeral practices. It had cross-referenced burial traditions from over 200 distinct Earth cultures. It had read religious texts, philosophical treatises, anthropological studies, and personal memoirs, and it still could not understand why humans placed their dead into the ground. So it asked. Dr. Osei stood in the corridor for a long moment. Her mother/s face floated up in her mind, the way she had looked in the hospital bed in the last weeks, small and thin and still somehow dignified. The way the funeral home had smelled of flowers that were slightly too sweet, the red clay soil of Accra as it covered the casket, her aunt singing a hymn in a voice that cracked on the high notes. Come with me, she said to Zevi, this is going to take a while. They settled in the observation lounge, a room of curved glass that looked out on the sweep of the Milky Way. Dr. Osei made herself a cup of tea, a habit she had inherited from her mother, who had insisted that no serious conversation could begin without tea. Zevi folded itself into the specially designed Luminae chair, its translucent form glowing faintly in the starlight. There are several answers to your question, Dr. Osei began, and they /re all true at the same time. The first answer is practical. Practical, Zevi repeated. It had learned to speak English through a neural translation device, and its voice had a quality like someone running a finger around the rim of a crystal glass. Clear, resonant, slightly unearthly. When a human body stops working, Dr. Osei said carefully, it begins to decompose, that /s a biological process. The body breaks down and becomes part of the environment. Burial in soil allows that process to happen in a contained, controlled way. It prevents disease, it protects the community. In the very early days of human civilization, that was probably the most important reason. Zevi considered this, so it is a sanitation practice. At the most basic level, yes, Dr. Osei said, but humans are not very good at doing things for only one reason. I have observed this, Zevi said, with what Dr. Osei had come to recognize as Luminae humor, a slight brightening of its internal light. Burial also returns the body to the earth, Dr. Osei continued. Many human cultures have a belief that humans came from the earth, from soil, from clay, from the ground itself. Different religions describe it differently. Some say God made the first human from dust. Others say humans are children of the Earth Mother, but their /s a common thread, the body comes from the earth and burying it is returning something borrowed, completing a cycle. The cycle of matter, we understand this. All matter cycles through forms, it is a fundamental law. Dr. Osei said, but for humans, understanding something scientifically and feeling it emotionally are two very different experiences. Knowing that your mother/s body will become part of the soil, which will feed the grass, which will feed the animals, knowing that docent/t necessarily help you stop missing her voice. She paused, she hadn't /t meant to say that. It had come out before she could stop it, raw and honest in the clean starlight of the observation lounge. Zevi/s eyes shifted, a deepening of color, a change in the complexity of patterns within its irises that Dr. Osei had learned to read as heightened attention. You have recently experienced the death of someone important to you, it said. My mother, Dr. Osei confirmed, 3 months ago. I am sorry, it had learned this human phrase and used it with what seemed like genuine feeling. Will you tell me about her? Dr. Osei looked at the stars for a moment. Her name was Adwoa Osei, she said. She was a teacher. She taught primary school in Accra for 40 years. She never left Earth, never wanted to. She thought space was beautiful but was content to look at it from the ground. A small, sad smile. She used to make me describe what it was like up here. Every time I visited, I had to tell her what the stars looked like without atmosphere. She loved that. She is why you are here. It was not a question. In every possible way, Dr. Osei agreed. They talked for hours. The tea went cold. Crew members passed the observation lounge, glanced in, and walked on. They had learned that when Dr. Osei was deep in conversation with Zevi, it was best not to interrupt. The second answer to your question, Dr. Osei said, is about memory, not just the practical act of burying, but what we build on top of that act. Graves, markers, headstones, monuments. We create a physical place that says this person existed, this person mattered, this is where they were laid to rest. A location of remembrance. Exactly, human memory is fragile, it fades. Generations pass and faces blur and voices are forgotten, but a stone with a name carved into it that can last for centuries. It gives the dead a kind of permanence that biological memory cannot provide. The grave says, even when no one who knew this person is alive to remember them, the fact that they lived is still recorded in the physical world. Zevi was quiet for a moment. In our culture, it said slowly, we absorb the memories of those who transition. We carry them within us. Every Luminae alive today contains within themselves a thread of memory from every Luminae who has ever lived. We do not need stones, we are the record. That sounds beautiful, Dr. Osei said. It is, Zevi agreed. But I think I am beginning to understand something about your way. When you go to the grave of your mother, you have visited it, yes. I saw in your personal log. You read my personal log, Dr. Osei raised an eyebrow. Zevi brightened, definitely humor. It was designated non-classified. I apologize if this was presumptuous. It/s fine, she said after a moment. And yes, I visited it before we left for this mission. I go every time I/am on Earth. Why? Zevi asked. Your mother is not there. The person she was, her consciousness, her personality, the qualities that made her who she was, those did not remain in the ground. The biological matter remained, but by your own explanation, that matter is cycling into the Earth. So why do you go to that specific place? Dr. Osei took a long breath. She had asked herself this question before, in the way you ask yourself questions that you know Don/T have easy answers. Because that/s where I can be closest to her, she said finally. It doesn't/T make logical sense. You/rewrite she/s not there. But that/s where the ceremony happened, that/s where we gathered all the people who loved her, that/s where we said goodbye, the place itself has absorbed something, not literally maybe, not in the way you would absorb her memories. But emotionally, symbolically, that place holds the weight of that moment. And when I stand there, I can feel close to her. I can talk to her. I can tell her things I forgot to tell her when she was alive. Zevi was very still. You speak to her. I know she can/T hear me, Dr. Osei said quickly. I don't/T believe in, well, it/S complicated what I believe. But yes, I speak to her, I tell her about my work, I tell her I miss her. Sometimes I bring her flowers because she loved flowers, even though she never knew which ones they were, she could never remember their names. And she always laughed about that she/D been surrounded by tropical flowers her whole life and still couldn't/T identify a hibiscus from a bird of paradise. Her voice broke slightly on the last word. And she stopped, pressed her lips together, looked at the stars. I understand something I did not understand before, Zevi said quietly. The grave is not for the dead, it is for the living. Dr. Osei looked at the small, ancient, glowing being across from her. That/S exactly right, she said. It was nearly ship midnight when they got to the third answer. The rest of the crew had long since gone to sleep. The observation lounge was lit only by starlight and by the soft internal glow of Zevi/S form, a warmth like distant embers. There/S a third answer, Dr. Osei said, and it/S the hardest one to explain. Tell me. Burial, the ritual of it, the ceremony, is the last thing we can do for someone we love. It/S the final act of care. When someone dies, you suddenly have nothing left to do for them. You can/T help them anymore. You can/T protect them. You can/T make them feel better. You can/T say the things you should have said. The helplessness of grief is enormous. It/S like, imagine being someone whose entire purpose is to take care of another person, and then that person is gone and their/S nothing left to take care of. That helplessness is devastating. And the burials. The burial gives you one last thing to do, choosing the place, choosing the ceremony, deciding what music will be played, what words will be spoken, what clothes they will be dressed in if you follow that tradition, carrying the casket, lowering it into the ground, putting flowers on the grave, it /s a final act of love and care. It says, I cannot do anything else for you now, but I can do this. I can give you this last good thing. Zevi was completely still in the way that meant it was processing something deeply. Its internal light had gone very steady, very focused. In our culture, it said after a long silence, we have studied human love for centuries. We have had considerable difficulty understanding it. Our emotion states are different. We connect, we bond, we care, but our version of these things is more like mathematics, precise, measurable, mutual. When two luminae connect, the connection is equal and known. There is no ambiguity. Human love is very ambiguous, Dr. Osei said. Oh, this is what has been so difficult to understand. From our observations, human love appears to be a form of irrationality. You love people who hurt you. You love people across impossible distances. You love people who die. You continue to love them after they are gone. Our models have classified this as a malfunction, a cognitive error, an emotional attachment that serves no evolutionary purpose once the object of attachment has ceased to exist. Dr. Osei didn't /T answer immediately. She was thinking about her mother, specifically about the last conversation they had had 3 days before Adwoa Osei died, when she had called from the ship and her mother had been too tired to talk much, but had said, I am so proud of you, my Mara. Go look at the stars for me. And can I ask you something, Dr. Osei said. Of course. In your culture, when the memories of someone who has transitioned are absorbed into the collective, do those memories change you? Does carrying them inside you alter who you are? Zevi seemed surprised by the question. Yes, it said, fundamentally, the memories we receive shape our understanding, our perspective, our very sense of self. We are not the same after receiving them. Then love is not irrational, Dr. Osei said. And it doesn't /TN when someone dies. My mother shaped me. Everything I am, my curiosity, my work, my reasons for being on this ship comes partly from her. She is not gone from me. She is inside me in every way that matters. The biological connection ended, yes. But the shaping, the influence, the love, the lessons, the memories, those /T disappear just because she does. I carry her. The way your people carry their transitioned ones, just differently. The silence that followed was long and full. We classified it as a malfunction, Zevi said at last. Its voice was very quiet. We were wrong. The next morning, Zevi asked Dr. Osei /S permission to do something unusual. It wanted to transmit a report to the Luminae High Council, not a standard mission report, but a personal communication, which was rare. The Luminae did not often communicate individually to the Council. Most information traveled through the collective. What do you want to tell them? Dr. Osei asked. I want to tell them that we have been wrong about humans, Zevi said simply. We have believed for many generations that the human attachment to the dead represents a failure of rationality, a primitive inability to let go. We have looked at your burial practices, your graveyards, your grief rituals, your mourning periods, your art about loss, all of it, and concluded that humans are uniquely bad at accepting the reality of death. That you are somehow trapped between acknowledging it and refusing to process it. And now, Dr. Osei asked, now I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood what love is. We have understood it as a state that exists between two living beings, a dynamic, an exchange. We have not understood that for humans and perhaps for other species as well. Love is not a state. It is a transformation. The love changes you permanently. The person you love becomes part of your identity. And because that transformation is permanent, the love does not end when they do. It cannot end because it is not located in them. It is located in you. That /S, Dr. Osei stopped, swallowed, that /S a very accurate description. And the burial, Zevi continued, is the ceremony that marks this. It is the moment when the relationship changes form, when the active exchange ends and the carried transformation continues. It is, in your terms, a graduation ceremony, a passage, It says this phase is complete. The next phase, the phase of carrying, has begun. Zevi, Dr. Osei said, her voice was unsteady. You might have just given me the best description of grief /V ever heard. I have had an extraordinary teacher. The response from the Luminae High Council came 48 hours later, faster than any council response in recorded mission history. Ambassador Chen was summoned to the communications center along with Dr. Osei, Captain Kira Vasquez, and the rest of the Luminae delegation. The message was transmitted in the Luminae harmonic language and translated simultaneously by the ship /SAI. The council had not merely responded. They had convened a special session, something that had not happened in over 2 centuries. The message, when translated, ran to 47 pages of dense philosophical reflection, but its core could be summarized in a few sentences. The Luminae High Council acknowledged that their classification of human grief behavior as primitive emotional malfunction had been a fundamental error, one that they were prepared to formally retract from the galactic academic record. They acknowledged that the error stemmed from a failure to understand love as a transformative rather than an interactive phenomenon. They requested, with what passed in their culture for extreme urgency, an immediate series of expanded cultural exchanges, not just with humans, but with every species in the Accord, specifically focused on understanding how different species experienced and processed loss. And they made one request that was, by Luminae standards, extraordinary. They asked if Dr. Mara Osei would be willing to come to the Luminae home system and speak directly to the council. Not as a scientist, not as a xenobiologist, but as a daughter. They want to understand grief from the inside, Ambassador Chen said, reading the message a second time. Her voice was slightly awed. They want to hear about your mother. Dr. Osei read the message herself. Then she read it again. Then she looked out the observation window at the stars, the same stars her mother had asked her to describe year after year on Earth. I'll tell them yes, she said. The journey to the Luminae home system took 11 days at faster-than-light speed, a strange, dreamlike stretch of time during which the Aethon moved through what the Luminae called the still space, a region between star systems where light itself seemed to slow and the darkness was deeper and more complete than anything Dr. Osei had experienced before. During those 11 days, Zevi and Dr. Osei talked almost constantly. Their conversations ranged across everything: the biology of grief, the neurochemistry of attachment, the anthropology of death rituals across Earth cultures and across the cultures of other species in the Galactic Accord. They talked about the Vorith, a species that dissolved their dead in an acid compound and then drank the resulting solution, a practice that horrified humans but served the same function as burial: transformation, return, continuation. They talked about the Kelthani, who left their dead on high platforms for sky creatures to consume, believing that the birds carried the soul upward. They talked about the Maori, who created intricate tapestries from the hair and fiber of their dead, so that every household object in a Maori home was woven through with the presence of ancestors. We have studied all of these practices, and we have categorized them all as primitive, as evidence that these species have not yet reached the level of rational processing that would allow them to accept death clearly. What made you start questioning that? Dr. Osei asked. When you spoke of your mother, I processed something that I cannot fully articulate in your language. Something shifted in my understanding. The closest approximation I can offer is this: I had been looking at grief rituals as evidence of what beings cannot do, cannot let go, cannot accept, cannot move past. But watching you, I began to see them as evidence of what beings can do: the capacity to love so thoroughly that the loss of the beloved reshapes you. The capacity to take that reshaping and transform it into ceremony, into art, into service, into the motivation to travel to the stars and describe them to someone who never had that chance. The rituals are not a failure to accept death. They are a celebration of the depth of what was felt while the beloved was alive. Dr. Osei was quiet for a long time. You know, she said finally, you just described something it took me 3 months of grief counseling to understand. And you got there in 2 days. You did the understanding, I merely found the words. The Luminae homeworld was called in the closest human approximation Etheria, though the Luminae themselves referred to it through a complex harmonic chord that the human brain could not retain. It was a world of extraordinary light. Every surface, the ground, the structures, the very air seemed to carry a faint luminescence. The sky was the color of a deep sea at noon, blue-green and infinite. The trees were crystalline and chimed softly in the wind. The Luminae moved through it all like living lanterns, their translucent forms brightening and dimming in response to emotion and thought. Dr. Osei had seen alien worlds before, 14 of them in her career, but she had never felt one quite like this. It felt, she later wrote in her journal, like being inside a thought, like stepping into the mind of something that had been contemplating beauty for a very long time. The High Council convened in a structure that was less a building and more a resonating space, a circular clearing of crystalline stone where the Luminae gathered and their individual lights merged into something collective and brilliant. There were hundreds of them. Dr. Osei stood at the center, a small human woman in a blue science uniform, and looked around at the assembled luminescence of one of the most ancient civilizations in the galaxy. I have been asked, she said through the translation device, to tell you about my mother. Her name was Edwoa Osei. She was born in Kumasi, Ghana, on the continent of Africa on the planet Earth in the year 2287. She died in Accra in 2361 of a condition that, despite all our medical advances, we have not yet learned to cure entirely. As she paused, the assembled Luminae were utterly still, utterly attentive. She was a teacher, Dr. Osei continued. She taught children how to read. She taught them mathematics and science and history. She taught 42 years of children, and she remembered every single one of them, their names, their struggles, their small victories. She used to send messages to former students when she heard about something good that had happened to them. She had a memory for kindness that was extraordinary. She never forgot a person who had been kind to her, and she never forgot a person who needed kindness given to them. The light in the clearing shifted, a ripple of something that might have been emotion moving through the assembled Luminae. She was not an adventurous person, Dr. Osei said, and her voice caught slightly on the word. She never left Earth. She had no interest in going to space, though she was proud of me for going. She once told me that she thought the universe was beautiful enough seen from the ground and that she didn't /T need to go up close to know that. She thought the real adventure was people. She said she used to say that no star in the galaxy was as interesting as a single human mind. She told them about the funeral. She told them about the church in Accra that had been packed beyond capacity with people her mother had taught, people she had helped, people who had loved her. She told them about the red clay soil and the hymn her aunt sang with the cracking voice and the flowers she had brought that she still couldn't /T entirely identify. She told them about standing at the grave afterward after everyone else had gone home and talking to the headstone as though her mother could hear her. I told her about this mission, Dr. Osei said. I told her I was going to meet the Luminae. I told her I would describe the still space to her, the darkness between the stars. I told her I was still going up there looking at the stars, describing them to her, even though she couldn't /T hear me anymore. Even though she was gone, because that /S what you do, that /S what love does, it keeps the habits of care even when there is nothing left to care for. It keeps talking even when there is no one left to listen. She looked around at the assembled council. The light in the clearing had shifted to something softer, warmer, unlike anything she had seen the Luminae produce before. That is why humans bury their dead, she said. Not because we don't /T understand that they /re-gone, but because we know exactly how much is gone and we want to honor the weight of that loss with everything we have. The grave is our acknowledgement that this person, this irreplaceable, specific, impossible to replicate person existed and mattered and changed the world simply by being in it, even if the world that changed was only ours. The consequences of that day on Etheria unfolded over the following years in ways that no one had fully predicted. The Luminae High Council did formally retract its classification of grief rituals as evidence of primitive cognition. They issued, through the Galactic Academic Record, a comprehensive revised understanding, one that described grief not as a malfunction, but as a marker of what they termed deep connection capacity. Species capable of profound grief, they concluded, were also capable of profound love, profound loyalty, profound creativity, and profound moral commitment. The depth of loss correlated directly with the depth of connection, and the depth of connection correlated directly with the richness of civilization. The document was controversial. Several species in the Galactic Accord pushed back, arguing that the Luminae were overcorrecting, romanticizing what was, at its core, an irrational attachment behavior. The Vexari, a highly logical species that had long modeled themselves after Luminae rationality, published a rebuttal running to several hundred pages. The Luminae responded with a document that was exactly one sentence long. The capacity to feel the loss of something beautiful is the proof that you were capable of recognizing beauty in the first place. The debate continued for decades in academic circles, but on the practical level, things changed immediately. The expanded cultural exchange program that the Luminae had requested was approved and launched within a year. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Accord, representatives from every member species gathered not to discuss technology or trade or territory, but to talk about loss, about who and what they had loved, about the specific textures of grief in each of their cultures. What emerged from those conversations was something that no one had expected, a recognition of profound similarity beneath the surface of profound difference. The Vorath who dissolved their dead in acid, and the humans who buried theirs in earth, and the Kelthani who offered theirs to the sky, and the Mari who wove theirs into tapestries, all of them were doing the same thing. All of them were finding ways to say, "You mattered, you changed me, you will not be forgotten." The love I felt for you was real, and real things leave marks, and I am marked by you permanently, gratefully, irreversibly. Dr. Osei, who had become unexpectedly famous in the wake of her address to the Luminae Council, spent the next decade traveling the Accord and documenting these similarities. Her book, titled The Grammar of Loss, became one of the most widely translated texts in galactic history, read not just by humans but by 37 other species. Zevi went on to become one of the most prominent Luminae scholars of its generation, specializing in what it termed transformative emotional dynamics, the study of how love and loss reshape individual and collective identity. It maintained regular contact with Dr. Osei for the rest of both their lives. Many years later, when Dr. Osei was very old and had returned permanently to Earth, Zevi visited her for the last time. It had been traveling for months to reach her, an extraordinary gesture for a Luminae who rarely left their home system once they had completed their exchange period. Dr. Osei was living in Accra by then, in the house where she had grown up, in the house where her mother had taught her to love the stars. She was sitting in the garden when Zevi arrived, and the afternoon light was warm and golden, and the flowers she had finally, after decades of effort, learned to identify were in bloom. They sat together for a long time without speaking. The silence was the comfortable kind, the silence between people who have said everything important and know that they will be heard even in the absence of words. "I have brought you something," Zevi said at last. It produced, from whatever interior space Luminae used to carry things, a small crystal object the size of a fist, perfectly clear, with something moving inside it that looked like light trapped in slow motion. When a Luminae who has had contact with another species transitions, Zevi said, we attempt to encode something of that connection. Not memories, those are too complex for this technology, but the emotional signature of the relationship, the shape of what was felt. Dr. Osei took the crystal carefully. The light inside it moved like something breathing. "Oh, what is this?" she asked. "The emotional signature of what you taught me. On the day you explained why humans bury their dead, the exact shape of the transformation that occurred in me in that conversation. What you called, I am attempting to find the right word. Of understanding," Dr. Osei said. "That is the right word, understanding." Dr. Osei held the crystal up against the warm afternoon light. The light inside it fractured and scattered across the garden, small prismatic rainbows among the flowers she had finally learned to name. "You know," she said, "my mother never got to meet you. She never got to know about any of this, what happened on Etheria, the book, the exchange programs, any of it. She died before I even knew any of it would happen." "But she backslash s the reason all of it happened," Dr. Osei said. "The reason I could explain it. The reason I had the words. The reason I knew from the inside what grief feels like and what it means and why it matters. She shaped me into someone who could stand in that clearing on Etheria and tell an ancient civilization why love doesn't backslash t end." She lowered the crystal. In the afternoon light, her eyes were bright. "She changed the galaxy," Dr. Osei said. "A woman who never left Earth, who taught primary school for 42 years, who could never remember the names of flowers. She changed the galaxy backslash s understanding of love, and she didn't backslash t even know it. On Zev, I backslash s light was very warm, very steady. Is this not what you said that first night? That love is a transformation, that it continues past the death of the beloved, through the people it shaped, into everything those people do and make and change." Dr. Osei said. "Oh, then your mother did know it," Zevi said gently. "Every time she looked at you, she knew exactly what she was making." The question that changed the galaxy backslash s understanding of love was asked by a child who had never lost anyone. The answer was given by a woman who had just lost everything. And what the galaxy learned, what hundreds of species learned, across decades of conversation and scholarship and the slow, patient work of understanding, was something that any human who has ever stood at a graveside already knew in their bones. Love is not a feeling that lives between two people. It is a transformation that lives inside one of them, permanently, irreversibly, growing richer and more complex with every passing year. And when the person who caused that transformation is gone, the love does not diminish, it deepens. Because now it must carry the full weight of everything that was felt and everything that was left unsaid and everything that was learned and everything that was given. We bury our dead because we love them. We love them because they changed us. And they changed us because, for however long they were here, they were extraordinary. And every single one of them. Even the ones who never learned the names of flowers. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of someone, let us know in the comments below. Share this video with someone you love while you still have the chance to tell them so. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that ask the questions worth asking.